All right. Good evening, everyone. Welcome to the April SouthernFried DNN user group meeting. We are excited tonight to meet here and talk about all kinds of things DNN, from the buzz of news and events and things that have happened in the last month, but also to get into topics and help teach each other and talk about tips and tricks and exciting ideas of how to do different things in DNN. Tonight, our main session is going to be about CloudFlare. Working within CloudFlare, talking about some of the features and things that are specific that you can do with CloudFlare for DNN sites. We're joined tonight by David Weinstein, who's going to kind of take over. I'll do a little bit of an introduction to talk about CloudFlare, cover some basics, cover some things that we use it for specifically. But then when I pass it to David, we're going to talk about disaster recovery and prep with CloudFlare, and might even be a little bit of migration help in there too. So I'm very excited to myself sit in and listen on that because it's going to be quite topical, especially with all the things that are going on in today's hosting environment. That disaster recovery or ability to do split-second changes from server A to server B is even more important than ever. And if CloudFlare can help with that, I'm thrilled to learn all about it. So today, as we do always, we'll begin by talking a little bit about the community and buzz of things that are going on in the DNN world. I always begin by jumping over to the dnncommunity.org website. Normally, there are some new blog posts, and since the last meeting a month ago, we will invariably have a post or two that are new that we can take a look at. But I think it's kind of a quiet period. We haven't seen any new posts yet, other than the fact that I posted the SouthernFried recap from the last meeting. And one of the things that I'm going to be doing is dual posting, not only on our SouthernFried website, all of those different articles and things, just like we'll post our recap and our information on the SouthernFried website. We'll begin doing those on the community website to help share and spread that information. This is actually kind of a good point for us to mention. We'll talk about it again towards the end of the meeting. But David Poindexter and I, as the co-chairs of SouthernFried, and along with Clint Patterson, who just joined us. I see him on the video there. Hey, Clint. We've all been talking a little bit about some of the things that are just happening in the DNN community, and some more traction, some more buzz that we're getting with articles and videos and with meetings in general. And one of the things that David is proposing is that for our SouthernFried meetings, we consider changing up when we have those meetings on an alternating basis. Something so that we can help and perhaps run on a trial period, see how it works out, but help some of our European DNN folks join our meetings and participate without it being 1 in the morning or 2 in the morning for them. So we'll post out information, watch for that both on our meetup location, on our public website, and over in the DNN Open Help Slack location, because once we nail down those plans, we will broadcast those for everyone. But more than likely what we will do is next month, instead of having it at 6:30 Eastern, which is our standard time, third Thursday of the month, we'll instead do a daytime SouthernFried. So we'll move it to something earlier. David and I haven't exactly locked down the time yet, but it will be during the business day. So whether we're having that at 1 in the afternoon or 3 in the afternoon even, we'll look to do it a little bit earlier. And what we might try is alternating it like that every other month. 1 month at 6:30 for everyone who can't do it during office hours, and then the next month earlier in the day to try and help that European crowd join us for meetings. So that's just one announcement to mention, and again, I'll remind about that towards the end of the meeting. David, did you want to jump in? Anything about that? David is joining us by phone and might have some trouble coming on and off of mute. Well, so anyways, we posted some information here on the DNNcommunity.org website, which is again our DNN community location to go for buzz and information. But another location that you'll see a lot of activity and a lot of conversations is in that DNN Open Help Slack location. We did a SouthernFried meeting a couple of meetings ago where we talked about that Open Help location and the types of things you could get out of that Open Help location to help each other and talk about different things. So if you missed that meeting and you're interested in joining that Slack location so that you can ask questions of all of us and get real-time responses, then this article will talk a little bit about that and help you get into it. But I have this tab on screen so that I can remember to bring over Slack and talk a little bit about the things that I've seen going on recently. One of which was I've seen a lot of conversation starting from Joe Craig about a couple of different features of DNN that have either fallen by the wayside or as things transitioned into version 9, they weren't fully or more robustly put out. And one of the things that he was really asking for and talking about was site group functionality. Things that used to be present in older DNN and in Evoke DNN, but which were not present in the current then version of DNN Community Edition. So some of the features that you could do, such as like managing your site groups, you would have to do that through the database. You could still do it, but through the database. But that made it harder to do some other things, such as sharing a module from another site or another portal within the same DNN instance. That certainly can still be done through the database, but it's such a complex set of things. It's just so much easier when there's an interface to do that. And so I enjoyed watching as Joe Craig started asking some questions and drilling through and talking about what he wanted. And Dan Veladas and David and others all started jumping in with responses. And sure enough, within just a little while, I don't know if that animation is happening for you there in the display, but with just a little while, it was wonderful to see the community come together, put together what Joe Craig was looking for, and do it in a timely way that it even made it out into a release. So one of the things that's enjoyable to point out is that we have the latest release just from a couple of days ago of DNN 9.9.1. Danny Veladas, if he joins us later, we may ask him for some more questions about this, but this brand new release has come out, and we have right here the bullet point of a new feature that came from what was happening in Slack in the last couple of weeks, and the things that Joe Craig was really asking for help about, which was getting back in some of the site group features of being able to add an existing module from another portal in the same DNN instance. So multiple takeaways from that. Number one, congratulations on the awesome core team of developers who keep putting together features and updates and these releases for DNN. Dan Veladas has been doing a lot of the writing, so I point to him first and foremost, but everyone from David and Joe and Mitch and Will and all of these people who are involved, it makes a difference. And if you think, gosh, I wish XYZ was in DNN, or I wish DNN did 1, 2, 3. Here's a perfect example where Craig started asking for something, and within a few days, it happened. And that wasn't always the case in DNN history, but I'm thrilled that it's the case now. So it's something to celebrate. Let's see, let me bring up the chat so that I can also see and kind of participate in the things that are happening in chat. Someone says they're having trouble getting into the meeting, but they're in the meeting. Interesting.
He said Steve is having trouble getting the meeting, and Mark.
See. Gotcha. All right. Well, so DNN 9.9.1 release is out there. So jump into that and start taking a look at it. There are some new features, and even the 9.0 release also had some new features. And I'd love to have Daniel and others come back and talk, with us more about those. One of the things that I was unaware of was anything relating to page style sheets stored in Azure folder provider. So there's a little bit of something I'll be doing some reading up about, and would love to have some presentation about in future SouthernFried meetings. One of the other things before I leave Slack was just a very nice note from David Poindexter. He posted in Slack that he had a sit down with longtime favorite in the DNN community, Aderson Oliveira. And you'll know Aderson from any of his videos where he starts them off with "Hello, hello." And David's carrying on that tradition in his DNN Dave videos as well. But here is solocoder.com, which is Aderson's primary website, where he posts his podcasts. David and Aderson sat down and talked for a while. So if you're interested, catch a video of that and share some old times of seeing Aderson back in the mix. All right. So with that, that is the DNN buzz and information that I have to kind of start off the meeting. From here, we will kick over and jump into the main topic for the night. As I described earlier, David Weinstein is going to run through a presentation, and we're going to talk about using CloudFlare for assisting DNN sites in disaster recovery. But I'm going to start with a little bit of an overview and some points that I pay attention to with CloudFlare. And I think if you're not using it yet, or if you're only using it for a few things, you might not be aware of all the different features. I'm sure I'm not aware of all the different features. But I thought I would start us off by talking about a few different things that are CloudFlare related. As always, this is, these are presentations, but we are informal here. So if anyone has information that they want to add in, if they want to chime in, certainly come off of mute and jump into the conversation, post questions and ideas in chat, and we'll try and incorporate those as well. The last time that I did a CloudFlare presentation for SouthernFried was back around 2016, and I put together some different things. I also did it at DNN Con and a few other things, and I put together some screens with bullet points, and I'm going to run through a few of those. But one of the things I mentioned was that looking backwards at it now, 4, 5, 6 years later, some of the things were a little optimistic. I hoped that CloudFlare will be able to do some more things than it has been able to do. It is a fantastic system. I really don't put up many websites without CloudFlare in front. But let's go through and talk about some of those features and the things that I certainly rely on CloudFlare for. And we'll start running through. So to begin with, what is CloudFlare? CloudFlare is a CDN, a content delivery network. It can sit as a proxy in front of you, your web server, and the internet. And as such, it has the ability to modify that content that's coming through to do multiple different things. CloudFlare started out as a CDN provider. That was the main focus of why it was even invented. But the inventors of it, the people who set it up, realized that while they were starting off going for a CDN provider, they inadvertently had a really good security tool on their hands, and that the ability to, on the fly, hot swap IP addresses for what is answering that content was going to be able to do things like get your website out from underneath of a DDoS attack. So these days, when I present CloudFlare as a tool to my clients, I don't actually even mention the CDN part. Unless I know that they're tech savvy, the CDN part isn't going to wow them. That's not going to convince them that I think we need CloudFlare in the mix. But when I describe to them that it is a security tool that makes it so that when you have a DDoS attack, you can get out from under that DDoS attack, and that CloudFlare will start blocking and redirecting those hits and that traffic to other locations, and then you jump to a different IP and you can continue on, that sells them. That is the main point of why I use CloudFlare these days. But let's talk a little bit about it. To begin with, as a CDN, it can cache content. So static files, images, JS files, CSS files, it will cache those, and it will provide those up in a CDN, content delivery network type of scenario. In other words, they have servers all around the world, and when you make a request for that file, it is going to come from the server that is the geographically within the internet closest to that person requesting it. So if your sites are hosted over in California, but this person is in New York, the brunt of the code for the site is still going to come from California, but the images and CSS files may come from New York, right around the corner from where that person is. So it can make a big difference for the delivery time of those files. If you have some speed tests of a website and you put in something like Cloudflare, you benefit from a couple of different things. Number one are some of the domain changes that occur, but number two, that CDN provider makes it so that that waterfall cascade of resources loading happens faster because they are being delivered from local and often cached locations that are nearby. We're going to dive into Cloudflare and I'm going to show you the interface of it. You know, there are settings of other things you can do inside of Cloudflare. We're going to talk about one of those. One of those is SSL certificates. Cloudflare can be an easy way to provide a free SSL certificate for sites that need SSL. And that's one of the items that I'll talk about in just a little bit. There are also speed and performance things that Cloudflare can do. It has tools and third-party apps. Of course, you would use you know, the settings inside of DNN to set up Google Analytics. But if you didn't want to, or you have sites that aren't as easy to put Google Analytics into, you can consider adding Google Analytics into sites with Cloudflare, as well as other types of tools. So there are apps and plugins that can be added into your site on the fly. There are security protections. There are security protections for email addresses, ways for you to leave the email addresses however they are, but have Cloudflare obfuscate them and make protections on those email addresses, some different things like that. There are downsides to working with Cloudflare. One of the main or one of the only downsides to working with Cloudflare is Cloudflare must be the DNS record, it must be the DNS for that domain name. So you cannot have Cloudflare involved if the domain is you know, being managed by the registrar or being managed by a DNS of that particular client. The only times really that I have clients who buck at using Cloudflare is when they have their own DNS, because they have their own special things in the closet and they've got Exchange over here and they've got 3 servers over there and they want to have control. In those situations, I encourage them, we create a Cloudflare account for them. And then I have access and they have access. And then we use Cloudflare as the DNS. Again, one of the reasons why Cloudflare must be the DNS is Cloudflare is on the fly changing things. That dynamic IP address that comes up for a site once Cloudflare is running can change multiple times. And if you're under a DDoS load, it will change lots of times. Pull out that IP address and swap out a different one. So that IP address could be getting hammered and it'll just swap and move on to the next one and keep on moving. So the only way that it can really do that is if it is the DNS. But otherwise, Cloudflare's setup is pretty easy. And so we're going to talk about that and talk about some of these different things as we jump in. I should have been on this one when I was talking about what is Cloudflare, but we'll share these resources at the end of the meeting. If you want to learn about Cloudflare, they have a lot of good articles, a lot of good videos to help describe it. But we will jump in and look at some of these features. Again, if I started using Cloudflare originally as a CDN, these days, one of the main features that I rely on Cloudflare for is as a DDoS tool, someone that can help get sites out from under DDoS and with some of their tools, make it easier for you to get back up and running to normal traffic faster. There are some articles that I'll share. One of them is a tips for new Cloudflare users article that talks about not only making sure that things are set up correctly, but some of the first few settings that you might want to try when you get into using Cloudflare. But specifically, let's dive into and talk about a couple of these different things here. I'll begin by talking about SSL certificates. I mentioned that as one of the features that I really appreciate. I know that I can use free SSL certificates from other systems and services, but Cloudflare has been the main one that we've used almost from the beginning. What it allows you to do is in IIS on your main server, you can set up a self-signed certificate. When you set up that self-signed certificate, you are able to put in the information that you want to for your own contact information and for the client's contact information, and you can generate that self-signed certificate. If you were to browse directly to the site while it's using that self-signed certificate, it would give you a warning. It would complain that this SSL certificate isn't truly secure. It's self-signed. That means there's no one, no authority is validating that information or that entity, and that it is dubious and you shouldn't trust it. That's the nature of self-signed certificates. But CloudFlare has a way to attach onto that self-signed certificate, and when they're displaying the site, serve up their SSL certificate. So you create a self-signed certificate that you set to last for a year or 2 years, and you, in IIS, set it up so that your website is using that self-signed certificate. And then in CloudFlare, underneath of the SSL settings area, you set on full encryption. When there are a few different modes of encryption that are possible inside of CloudFlare, but when you set on full encryption, it is going to manage that process all the way along. And the only thing that it requires from you and from your server is an SSL certificate on the other end. And that's where that self-signed certificate will be sufficient for CloudFlare to use it, identify that SSL is enabled and is running, and then it will put up the CloudFlare SSL certificate. And the CloudFlare SSL certificates are made so they show a 30-day expiration. Oh, big man. Sorry, I stopped the whole presentation for that. Big man over here on the desk with Clint Patterson. Hey there, buddy. You gonna give me a high five on the screen? Give me a high five on the screen. Bam, that's right. Yeah. If nothing else shows you that we're a pretty laid back group. We get kids on screen. Absolutely. I'll be drawn over every time. Okay, so that SSL certificate, it's a free way to do a quality SSL certificate. Oh, I was mentioning the dates. So it ends up being a 30-day certificate, and CloudFlare just keeps renewing that. It's almost like it's dynamic from that day for 30 days forward. So you always have a fresh, solid SSL certificate for your site. Now, there are a few other settings underneath of this SSL section that I always pay attention to do. One of those, here. One of those is that, of course, we can do this with inside of DNN. We can tell DNN to always serve up HTTPS for sites and for pages, but that doesn't control your PDFs and your JPEGs and things that are linked directly. Now, you can do that in IIS, and you can do that in the web.config, but without making those kinds of changes through CloudFlare, you can click a checkbox and say, always use HTTPS. And then every request that comes out of that domain will automatically come through as HTTPS. So your PDFs, Excel files, whatever else you have up there that are not managed through the .NET process, they will automatically be HTTPS. So that is a good feature to have here. We have had some systems where we integrate with other third-party tools, and those third-party tools have complained that on our server we still had enabled older TLS versions. If you don't know much about SSL security and I start talking about TLS security and versions, then I'll put you to sleep. But I will just describe that the newer the version of the TLS, the better the security is for those SSL transfers and for the protocol in general. And even though we have enabled on our site the older TLS protocols, sometimes it can be tough to force that transaction to occur over the higher level of TLS. And you can jump through a bunch of hoops on your server to get that happening. Most of the time, you have to turn off or remove the older TLS and just leave the newer version. Well, if you're using CloudFlare and you have that as a problem, then you can tell it to enforce the minimum TLS version, and CloudFlare will do that for you. So you can leave your server alone. You don't have to mess with that, and CloudFlare will help take care of that for you. There are a few other things that are built into CloudFlare as far as SSL is concerned, but those are the main things that I kind of wanted to point out. Next, I wanted to talk a little bit about the firewall and about the types of things you can do with either a free or a paid Cloudflare account for protections for your site. So to begin with, you can come in and we'll finish. Before I pass off to David, we'll finish by talking about some of the analytics and things you can see, because there are a lot of stats that you can really see in here that are very fun to look at and are creative. But there are rules that you're able to create for the site and for things that you want to have happen. So these are blocking security protections that you can set up and turn on once you have Cloudflare in place. So for instance, here for this particular website, I have 3 rules going on. And I'll tell you that although I was using the rules a certain way before, I was watching a presentation, some notes from Will Stroll, who gave some tips that I hadn't considered in the same way. And he really helped me turn around how I was using these rules. And this is basically what I do now for most sites inside of Cloudflare. To begin with, I have a generic rule in place that known spiders and bad bot crawlers are blocked automatically. And you can see here in the last 24 hours, 114 attempts or hits from those have been blocked from hitting the traffic, hitting the website. If we go into some of the details for these, you can end up drilling in and seeing that we have, go to the advanced, we basically have a list of bad bots or bad agents that we block. Some of those aren't as, I don't know, they're innocuous. SEMrush and the bot that's from SEMrush. If I was using SEMrush for my own SEO tools, then I'd be blocking myself here in this situation. But there are plenty of other ones here. And basically, if they're in this list, my action that we're choosing is we're blocking them. But we can have other actions like JavaScript challenging, like a am I a robot kind of challenge. CAPTCHA, there we go, as one of the other challenges, or you can allow or you can bypass rules and allow them through. So when we're taking a look at some of these rules, we have, first off, we block known bad bots. Second off, if a user and the actions that they've been doing has gotten their IP address blocked or banned, then based on their actions and their activities, we block users above a certain reputation score. And so while the user is browsing around through not only your website, but all the other websites that are out there in Cloudflare, if that IP address is repeatedly doing suspicious stuff, their reputation, their IP reputation, the score is going up and going up and going up. And once they trigger past a certain threshold, then whether it was on your website or someone else's website, the next time they hit your website, you can block them or you can challenge them. So here we're blocking reputation scores above a certain amount. Otherwise, we are challenging the users. And it looks here like 3 times in the last 24 hours, a human or someone has been challenged because the score had gotten to a certain level. And in this situation, it means they had a score at all. They had a score greater than 1. And we give them a reCAPTCHA challenge. So these
Hey, Ryan.
Go ahead.
Ryan, this is Dave. So the firewall, the Cloudflare has default settings. Are you using default settings or these custom settings?
It's a good question.
When you turn on the firewall, it just, Cloudflare does a lot of this itself, but
Cloudflare does, and we're going to go over to the managed ones in a second. Yeah. I don't know. I think these are custom. I think there were a couple of articles, both in Cloudflare and from Will Stroll, that talked about these different settings, and some of them applied and some of them didn't. Some of the other ones that in this particular case didn't apply, but I do use them for other sites, are geographic blocking. We will many times block anything that isn't from the US or Canada or Mexico for corporate sites in which they don't pertain to international traffic. And just that alone dramatically drops the amount of DDoS traffic that you're going to receive and just bad action traffic. So on the sites where we can block that, it makes a big difference.
I did the geographic as well, and it was fantastic.
Mhm.
Until somebody, a real user, wanted to get in, because it wasn't a marketing website. It was,
Yes. Yeah.
but yeah, that it is the geographic one was a lifesaver.
Yeah. Now, aside from your ability to create firewall rules, there are rules that are just built in. The first thing or the easier thing is that if you have a paid account, you can turn on the WAF, the Web Application Firewall. And just by turning it on, the best of Cloudflare's natural things that are just built into it, that they keep improving all the time, are automatically turned on and are active. And for the most part, that is already a big difference. But we turn on a few of their Cloudflare managed rule sets. So these are things that Cloudflare has that are in addition to the custom ones that we've created. So for instance, we had some Flash rules that I could probably turn off now, but we turned on at one point. There are some miscellaneous rules. And if you read into these, you go into the details, you can read about what all these rules are. So I don't turn on the Cloudflare Magento and I don't turn on the Cloudflare Joomla rules because they don't apply. They might not matter or might not bother much, but I just don't turn those on. But I do turn on the Flash one, the miscellaneous one. And my favorite here is the Cloudflare Specials rule. I showed this in a recent SouthernFried meeting. But in the Cloudflare Specials rule, I turn this on, and if you go to the details, oh, it's way down there. Hello, come on. All right, Cloudflare Specials rules. Here we go. There are a bunch of different defaults and a bunch of different things that are here, but one of my favorite is right here in the middle of the screen. Does everybody see that one? .NET Nuke file inclusion. So we have our own rule in the defaults of Cloudflare that are present, and this one is doing what it can with some of the vulnerabilities that were known at that period of time for the DNN versions at that period of time. So it's blocking some of the file actions that could occur in older DNN instances. It might not apply if you were in DNN 9, but if you're still running older DNN 7 and DNN 8, you can use every little bit of help you can get for security. And this is one of the nice features that is there. Okay, so some of the things that I talk about or want to talk about, basically I'm wrapping up here now with my portions of Cloudflare. When you get into those analytics, it's always entertaining to come in and take a look at what requests have been cached, what requests have been directed to your server. You can take a look at the types of requests by country. But some of my favorites are to take a look at the attacks and the stats on activities or actions that were occurring. So if I go into the security side of analytics, you can see the threats that have come through, and you can see the types of threats, and you can see the areas that they came from. This is a smaller site with less traffic, but it's always been interesting to take a look and see the kind of locations that bad activities are coming from. And if nothing else, that can help you make your list of sites that you're going to block first off, and you might not need to block Canada because you have nothing coming from Canada, but maybe you do decide to block Brazil and India and other things like that. So anyways, lots of good stats and things that come from Cloudflare. A couple of little things just to mention with Cloudflare. If you do use Cloudflare with multiple people and you have a user login account and they have a user login account to your Cloudflare, and you turn on two-factor authentication, there's a catch-22. If you lose your phone or if you have to set up two-factor authentication again, but someone else is already connected in, basically you have to pass two-factor authentication to disable two-factor authentication. And if you lose the QR code that's used to get you connected to two-factor authentication, then you have to have them log in and turn off two-factor authentication, so then you can go through the process all over again. So my takeaway here is I use Cloudflare with two-factor authentication turned on. I happen to use the Google Authenticator because I like that. But one of my recommendations is when you get this particular screen from Cloudflare, in which you have this QR code that you can use inside that two-factor app, print it. Take a screenshot of it and save it as a JPEG on your hard drive, because then if you lose your phone and you need to set up two-factor authentication on a brand new phone, you don't have any way of doing it unless you can successfully log into Cloudflare, turn off two-factor, and then turn it back on again. So in my situation, I got stuck once where a client couldn't log into two-factor. I couldn't log into two-factor, and so I had to jump through some extra hoops. So just mentioning that out there as a as a good tip or suggestion. As part of the article that I post for tonight's meeting, I will post a little bit of an article that talks a little bit about Cloudflare's SSL options and what they all mean, but specifically that full option. And then we'll talk a little bit, or I'll post an article that talks a little bit about Cloudflare and their dedicated SSL certificates, because that's one of the extra things that they're getting into doing is having traditional SSL certificates as well. So you can certainly buy them from lots of different places, but if you're using Cloudflare, you can also purchase a traditional SSL certificate from within Cloudflare. And between that and domain registration, which is another new thing that they've gotten into, they're doing something new all the time. There's some new features that are rolling out, and every few months I notice a new option or a new feature that I haven't tried out before. So I will get in there and try out some new features. And maybe that's a good segue for me to pass things over to David and say that here, now I'm going to learn a little bit about some new features, because I really haven't thought about using Cloudflare in a migration or disaster recovery and helping me balance between two servers. And that's a really good use of this technology. And so I'm looking forward to learning more about it with you. So David, I'm going to turn off my screen share and I'm going to pass it your way.
Okay. Well, hi everybody. Thank you, Ryan. I learned about all the things that I don't use Cloudflare for that I should be using Cloudflare for.
That's what it's about.
I want to say that it's funny because 2 years ago in Miami, I think I told this at the last SouthernFried, I walked up to the registration desk with my luggage. I was checking in, and there was Ryan standing there, and I introduced myself to Ryan. And we said, "Oh, I know Joe Craig. He knows Joe Craig." And he said, "Oh, so what are you interested in?" So I said, "Well, I really want to learn how to secure my websites." He said, "Put it behind Cloudflare." I said, "Okay, well, I'm done. I'm going to get back on the plane and go home," because that was the number one thing that I learned at that conference. And it has been, I have to say, it's been a godsend for my my websites, which are not I have a couple of marketing websites, but they're very heavily interactive, users pounding away, entering data management websites. So without further ado, I'm going to launch into my slide, and let me know if you can see that. My screen's moved around here a little bit. Let me get reoriented. Can you see my presentation screen? Good, right?
Yes, we see everything well. Perfect.
Yep. All right, great. Okay. So interestingly, Ryan's approach is, and what we learned is, there's a lot that you can do in terms of using it for SSL, which I had not thought about. It's funny because I do have the SSL feature turned on, and when I go to look at my certificate, it says it's by Cloudflare instead of GoDaddy. I have a 256 high-end certificate, and I said, oh, okay, well, by clicking the check mark, in Cloudflare and say yes, I want it to, go through Cloudflare. It's actually increased. It's increased the speed. So all of the things that you end up doing with Cloudflare, actually, there's a lot of performance improvements you get de facto by doing some of these other things. The caching, just hitting the .NET Nuke login page, a second or two has been knocked off, and it's much snappier hitting that page. So the rest of my website is slow, but that's my fault, writing bad data management code. But no, but even my data management pages have increased in speed. So, there's a lot of good reasons to do that. So let's jump into it. So who am I? Let's see, where am I over here? So here I am. I'm David Weinstein. Oh, that looks like an old picture of me. I think that's when I was in a rock band with Aaron. I had long hair and everything. Let me switch. There I am. Okay, that's better.
Wow. Wait, that wasn't a rock star picture, because that was fantastic.
Yeah, it was actually. Yeah. So that when I look at that picture, that's who I see when I look at myself in the mirror. It's actually David Gilmour. It's actually David Gilmour from Pink Floyd.
All right.
So that's me. So I've got my own company, Office Automation Experts, old school, managing and creating websites, doing back end office automation functions and features. But also, I've been in the biotech, pharmaceutical, medical industries for about 30 years, providing clinical data management to clinical trial processes. I actually worked for a little while on Pfizer's vaccine project for while it was getting aftermarket, and I have to say that there's a lot of work that goes on in that industry behind the scenes. For instance, how did we get those vaccines from Moderna and Pfizer out so quickly? Well, it's not just in the past year's worth of work. It's 5-10 years worth of R&D going on in the back end. And I've been privy and lucky to have been supporting those researchers and clinicians over the years on the IT back end side. I'm also a principal with Vector Wellness, which is a health and wellness solutions company. And you can read what it says here, but that's where my .NET Nuke focused applications are running. So we've got health and wellness solutions for managing coaching, health and wellness coaching of patients in hospitals, employees out of hospitals, or corporate clients as well. So the portal structure within .NET Nuke has been great for that because I've got my applications that I've developed, probably 50, 60 data management modules, reporting modules that the capabilities of .NET Nuke have really supported really, really well. So that's who I am. So today let's talk about the use case that I'm going to be presenting. So basically, you have a company, you have a business. It could be small mom and pop. It could be a mid-size, or it could be a large corporation, government, banking, anything. So whether you're small or large, you really need to have a business continuity plan. Most of us don't really think about that, or we think that we can survive a disaster. But a business continuity plan is very broad. If you have an office with three people in the office, what do you do? If you have something like a pandemic and people can't come into the office, are you ready to the next day be able to have your business continue its standard operations? Or what if you have 500 people in an office or 5,000 people? So, your telephony issues, all of your back-end systems. And the good news is that we were very, thank God for Zoom. Zoom became a big savior for businesses and managing their businesses. But there's a lot of other things that businesses struggled to maintain so the businesses could continue. As part of that, you need a disaster recovery plan. Disaster recovery and business continuity are not one and the same. Disaster recovery is a subset of business continuity. And as IT professionals, which I presume most of us are, we need to make sure that we can provide the business the ability to recover from a disaster. And there's different levels of disasters. There's my website went down. Somebody pulled the network card out. They pulled the network wire, out of the back of the server. You uploaded and a new version of .NET Nuke, and it was great, but something that you wrote custom broke. So what do? Up to a blackout, and loss of power, or a data center can go down. What do you do? So those are the range of things that can happen. So equipment failure, malware. I love CloudFlare because it's really helping with malware. I'll give you an example of that. Ransomware. So if your server gets hit with ransomware, now you're being said, pay us $50,000, and we'll release your server to you. Well, you don't want to pay the 50 grand. So how can you recover from that without paying an arm and a leg, or stupidware? I uploaded the .NET framework 4 point whatever installed, and it broke my app. And I'm not saying that the .NET framework is stupid, but I allowed that patch or that upgrade to occur without testing it first, perhaps in another environment. So those are just some examples of the kinds of things that can happen. So this is continue in the use case mode for a few minutes. So basically, you have a Windows server. It's either on-premise or hosted. It could be physical or running as a VM, and maybe it's not in Azure or at AWS yet. We've got I've got a couple of rack-mounted servers still doing some old applications, but I've also got things running at a hosted environment, and I'll talk about my host because they actually became an integral part to my disaster recovery. You have a service level agreement with your customer, and it's for a very short window of downtime, maybe not 99.99%, but or maybe it is. My use case I'm going to describe to you here is, and my solution is, what's my tolerance for downtime? 99.9% is over a year. So can I tolerate 5 minutes or 15 minutes? Let me rephrase that. Can my customers tolerate 5 minutes or 15 minutes of downtime twice a year? And maybe if they don't even notice it, it's not relevant whether they tolerate it. They didn't even notice it. Your customer can be your own company. If you're running your own company and you've got your own websites up and running, you're your customer. If you're in a bigger company and you're IT supporting them, or you're a consultant providing IT services, those internal departments of that company, are relying upon you and your services, or they can be external clients. In my scenario, I don't have 24/7 IT operations on staff. So what happens when the server has an issue at 2 o'clock in the morning? Is Hillary Clinton awake and ready to take the call? At 2, 3 in the morning? I don't think so, and neither am I. But I have customers who are around the world. I have a user in Australia. I have quite a few in Europe, and obviously in the United States. If you think about, I think if we're all East Coasters, there are people working on the West Coast at 9 o'clock at night our time, right? It's 6 o'clock their time. They could be working till 10, 11 o'clock, which is 2, 3 in the morning our time. So I'm not going to be awake necessarily to take care of that. So what am I going to do? So I'm going to need to put together some tools to solve this problem. And so this is a very long laundry list. I'll go through it relatively quickly. So first, you have your Windows primary server. What you're going to need is you're going to need a secondary server, right? So when Ryan was talking earlier about, changing it, and where Cloudflare can point to, it is your DNS server, and it can point to other DNS servers. Well, where are they? They have to be an actual thing. This is not going to work if you only have one server. So you need a secondary server, and that can be on premise. I don't recommend it that you have two servers in the same rack, because if somebody walks along and kicks the power out of the rack, both servers went down. I did that when I was young, right? Not that I kicked it, but I certainly had servers in the same rack. And then
I'll chime in there with hosting providers. You rely on your hosting provider and you want them to be up all the time. But if they themselves suffer ransomware or a large scale DDoS that hits their primary data center or some other type of thing that is affecting, it could even be an ISP related thing for a whole section of the country. That's happened more than a few times where everyone New York and up was out for, half a day. So in those situations, if you're planning on making this, make those servers as far apart as you can. Make one of them with company A and the other one with company B, and they're in two completely different locations, on purpose.
Right. And I'm gonna be reiterating that throughout this. And you can use different companies, and there's ways to do that, and we'll see pictures of that. So number one, off-site, not in the same building, not in the same rack, not in the same building. That's for sure. The second server needs to be resourced similarly to the first server. Same number of CPUs, same amount of memory, same amount of disk. That's easy, and we'll talk about how easy it actually can be. If as I described, and I have made my service provider an integral part of my disaster recovery process. For those after hours, if you're 24/7, get them to buy into it and be part of the solution. Not just the hardware provider, but they've got guys who are sitting there, staring at their computers. In the old days, they'd be, changing tapes. Well, they can be part of the solution, and we'll see how that works soon. And that's if the rollover or the failover to the secondary system or the tertiary system won't be unattended or fully automated. The dream is to have that fully automated, unattended. You can have that dream today pretty easily with AWS and Azure. They have, if you get an Azure implementation, you get 5 redundant servers around the country. If you're in AWS, it's something similar to that. But a lot of companies aren't in Azure yet, or haven't migrated their solutions to AWS yet. Eventually, maybe we'll all be there, but we're not all there yet. So this mindset says, I've got my service in racks at an ISP. So what am I going to have that data center staff do? They're going to monitor my servers, and they're going to perform my failover for me, where it's not automated. And yes, by the way, even without Azure, this solution can be automated if you don't have that data center staff. It takes a little bit of extra work, a little bit of PowerShell to push the button to fail over. But if they're on hand, on staff, use them. And the main reason is because maybe I needed to verify that failure, because maybe it wasn't a real failure. Maybe it's a false positive. Maybe I rebooted the server and it only took me a minute or two to reboot the server at 2 o'clock in the morning. I don't want Cloudflare and you'll see how robust I've made this. I don't want it to automatically fail over to my other site, and then it's going to take me, a bunch of days to replicate back. And we'll talk about why that might take longer. So the human person to do the QC check to say, is this a significant failover? Is this a significant failure? Do I need to fail over? It's really powerful. Now I can do that too. I can have a system call me, and there's in addition to Cloudflare, there are other tools that it'll ring my phone next to my bed, and it'll wake me up, and then I'll get up and go over and log on and say, no, damn it, the Windows updates, the Wednesday, right? The automatic Windows updates, rebooted the server, and the server didn't come back. Well, if I go through my VNC console, I can, reset it, fine. Do I want to get up at 2 o'clock in the morning? I'm getting, getting too old for that, right? So, let somebody sitting in a data center room do that for me. And hopefully it's built into the cost of my hosting. And again, this can be automated. So, you can do it, and that's always been my dream. But this year, when I finally realized this part of the dream of having the disaster recovery in separate regions, we really decided the ISP site, it really doesn't pay to be automated. And they've got some very big clients. They're doing it for them, the other clients as well. And they're very happy, not because they want their guys to have work to do, but because it minimizes all that extra work on the failback. And there's a lot of documentation that has to go on with failover. So more tools you'll need. So that was your basic server, right? You had your server set up in your secondary server, and mitigating the false positives. And I want to give you an example. Last night, while I was working on this, I made a change in CloudFlare. I wasn't sure, and also my malware bytes on my server said, you haven't rebooted. You really need to reboot to remove the the malware byte things, whatever might have been there. And so I rebooted at 1:46 in the morning, and CloudFlare said, and we'll get into this in detail, but just see that CloudFlare said my primary server is down. And a minute later, it said the primary server was back up. In that amount of time, I could have failed over to my other site. And now, because and we'll talk about it some more, I've been replicating to the other site. Great, that happened. Well, that worked out great. But you know what? Replication back before it establishes its baseline coming back and has fully replicated back is going to take a while. Somewhere between, depending on how much disk you have, I have at 1.2 terabytes. That could take a couple hours. You know what? I'm not replicating back today on Wednesday or Thursday. I now have to schedule a maintenance window to replicate back. So let me just say that failover is easy, right? It can happen. It can be automated. Fail back takes some more time and effort. So that's why we don't want false positives rebooting and causing that to happen, because the pain of failing back isn't worth it. You can, in the health monitoring for CloudFlare, adjust it to be less touchy. So we'll see that in a little while. More tools you'll need. You need some replication technology. So Ryan and I think we can say we're enamored with CloudFlare. CloudFlare is fantastic. CloudFlare won't do the failover of your servers. It does the failover, and I think of it this way. It does DNS rerouting. It does DNS failover. It does through its load balancing capability, which is not load. There's two things you can use CloudFlare load balancing for. Traditional load balancing, like I've got too much work going on at this server, so I'll move some of it over there. That's not what we're talking about here. What they call load balancing, I'm calling DNS failover. I can't reach my site, so point to my other site. Well, that's great. What if I pointed up to my other site? But what if my other site isn't up yet, right? So what you really need is you need some server-based replication technology. And so I'm going to show you a list of things you could do. You can buy something out of the box, like Zerto or Carbonite. We all hear the commercials for Carbonite. Carbonite has server-based replication. So it's doing bit level, I'll call it bit, it might be block, bit or block level disk replication across your pipe to the other server, from the primary to the secondary, all the time, running always. It used to be called double take. There's half a dozen other server replication products out there that are third party out of the box. I use Zerto because that's what my ISP came up with. I have 2 or 3 IT buddies, and all of their companies are looking at Zerto because I think it is probably one of the top server-based replication tools. And I have a little slide that shows that they're actually rated as #1 by somebody. You could do, as we work backwards through time, right? You could do Windows Server failover clustering. You could do synchronous storage replication. I never even did these, right? I've been waiting 10 years for a CloudFlare plus Carbonite or Zerto type solution because this is too much work for me. I've got other things to do. I have a business to run. I never wanted to spend my time doing that stuff. It's exciting. I'd love to learn about it from a technology standpoint, but I'm not going to make any money doing these things. From the olden days, I did transaction log serving, right? Everybody who did transaction log serving, shipping, raise your hand, right? Oracle, Microsoft, SQL Server, pain in the neck, right? But it worked, but it's a lot of work. Or you can roll your own back end, and I'm actually going to give us a little recipe for how you can roll your own replication technology without a lot of this other heavy lifting, the Windows Server stuff. Or you can just bite the bullet, go with an infrastructure that's architected for failover, like Azure or AWS. These aren't inexpensive. I costed my server environment that I have with Zerto against Azure and AWS, and Azure and AWS are a little bit more expensive. My partner is very frugal with our money, and we said, look, let's stay where we are. Plus, I have the knowledge of my ISP. My ISP knows my system really well. And the data support people know it well. Azure, Microsoft doesn't care. They will take care of everything for you. Go to a Microsoft Azure webinar, which we've all done, and they will tell you, and they are 100% right. And I plan to eventually implement Azure, and we'll see how in a moment, as part of my infrastructure to enhance my replication capability. But those are the ways you can do it. So today we're going to focus on the out-of-box deployment, which is using CloudFlare and Zerto, and my ISP and all my resources. So more tools you need. This is actually not the right heading there, but I just want to put a plug for Zerto. Zerto is great for VM environments. Carbonite, it's also probably great for virtual for VM environments. It also works great for physical servers. So does Zerto. But again, I'm not pushing Azure and AWS. But it's also an opportunity and a reason to go virtual. Whether you're going into the cloud or all of my applications, all my servers are virtualized. They're all sitting on racks. I don't own a physical server in the data center. And we all know that stuff. That's kind of probably essay. So other tools you need a decent pipe because of the bandwidth between the servers. When you first start up the replication, it could take a lot of bandwidth, right? And if you have a narrow pipe, it's going to take longer to replicate. It's going to take a weekend. It's going to take 5 days. 1.2 terabytes on 100 megabits. It's going to take a week, right? But gratefully, my ISP has somewhere between a 1 and a 10 terabyte pipe. I think I asked them today. I think that's what they replied to me with. They've only told me 20 times, but I know it's fast. So my replication back and forth, whether I'm failing over or failing back, 2 hours the first time, and then after that, it's just changes, right? It's just the small blocks, the bits, and it's continuous. And that's with Carbonite or Zerto. They all do once you establish the first replication, the first baseline, it starts moving along. So you need a nice pipe. So you don't want a small data center, environment. You do need extra spare disk for the data replication staging. They corrected me today when I was reviewing this with them a little bit. They call it journaling. So you got that baseline, it's not putting the bits into my C drive that has my secondary site just yet. It's journaling and creating, and if you right, just like we do with Windows, you can have what's it called? Time points, snapshots, right? Or when you're doing Windows upgrades, you can take a what's the term when you do a Windows upgrade, and you can take a snapshot at a point in time. Anybody remember what that's called?
Yeah, I mean,
right.
Snapshot's right on. It's your
snapshot. Right. So it takes snapshots and it'll journal, and I have enough disk to journal 5 days worth of snapshots. Why? I'm going to jump right to it. Ransomware, right? Boom. I get the email on Tuesday. I'm screwed. But you know what? If I've got a journal and I can go back to a point in time and say, hey, Saturday was when they hit me, so I'm going to go to an hour before they hit me and took over my server. Boom. I just, I have a lot of points of time. I have enough disk to give me the comfort that I can go back 5 days, hopefully, 3 days. 3 days might be enough. 2 days might be enough. But, when did you find out that they infected you, right? When did that malware hit that you can't get rid of? I remember my very first virus. It was the Joshai virus. Couldn't get rid of it. It came in on a floppy disk. Boom, took out that server, that PC, could never get rid of it. So, it'd be nice that if I can go back to a point in time before that happened. Ryan said, number one thing is, you need a registered domain. Let me say this about our solution that Ryan and I have been talking about. CloudFlare is for web-based solutions. You're not going to, if you have a closed environment in your, you're in the Federal Reserve or in a banking environment, yeah, you could be using CloudFlare for your client-facing applications, right? But the back-end office stuff, that's not exposed to the internet, so CloudFlare doesn't play, right? It doesn't have a place for that. But so our use case here is we're talking about web-based applications with back-end servers, SQL Server, whatever the servers are. Our favorite
public-facing back-end.
Yeah, exactly. But this scenario that we're talking about here, and I actually get gotten a couple of emails from some folk from the DNN conference, the virtual conference. They wanted to see my solution to just the DR on the back end without the CloudFlare. So I said, well, you get both. But yes, you need a registered domain, obviously. You need CloudFlare. Again, this is the toolkit. And again, I want to just drive home that the CloudFlare for the disaster recovery is for the DNS failover component underneath their load balancing menu system. And for the load balancing option, you have to pay extra. It's not a lot. There aren't double dollar signs there. It's like $5 a month. I'll show you that in a moment. You have to have unique IP addresses for both servers because it's physics, right? Right? You can't have two objects occupying the same IP address at the same public IP address. So you need a unique IP address for each server. What did I do? Hit my roller bar. And then Ryan and I talked about yesterday. I think you need a tertiary site for a major disaster. Regionally, and Ryan said it, you can have the blackouts of the 70s and other blackouts. They can take out the Eastern Seaboard. So what happens when Site 1 and Site 2 are both down? Because even though they're 500 miles away, they're both still down, right? Or what happens if your server is so corrupted that you can't bring your second one up? That won't happen, but so you can have a tertiary site. Ryan's idea, I think I have that in here, was if the secondary is down, think regional blackouts, right? But I think my idea. So Ryan, I didn't put yours in here, but I'll say what yours is first because I did like it. If it's a marketing website and there isn't a lot of changes happening in data, then you can have a snapshot from a month ago. I think you said, right, Ryan? You can have a third site at a very cheap, the hosting company, I'm not going to say any names because I don't want to disparage them by saying that thing. They're cheap. You can have a third, inexpensive, very good hosting company which has got a snapshot of your marketing website, so that when the first 2 sites are down, people still see something.
We had a site where there was basically some malware uploaded to the site, and because it had happened but then not triggered long enough ago, the backups that we had also had it in place. So even though we rolled back to a backup from 2 weeks before, then it was still present. We still had to root it out from the backup from 2 weeks ago. But if we'd had a live backup from a month ago, it would have been fine. So that got my wheels turning and thinking, have 2 rollovers, but then have another one trailing behind that's a month older. That way you have that further option back, just hot and ready to go.
I have to tell you that I was thinking about it. I was saying, but you know what you could also do is that third site doesn't actually have to be a backup. It could just be a clone sitting there from a year ago, and you could just post your updates. Go into DNN, I made a change over here. Let me put some of my, let me edit both places, and maybe with some of the features that you guys are rolling out, maybe you can push some of that content, without the malware to that tertiary, off third site. So it doesn't even have to be a month old; it'll be 6 months old. But it's got your logo up there, it's got your homepage, and you could just post, the marketing changes until somebody says, "Wait a second, what happened to all?" So, but for me, what I've done is I've actually I set up a small server in my office, which if the first 2 go down, CloudFlare reroutes to that server, and which is again, it's a public facing server under CloudFlare, so it's protected, well protected, but it's got none of my data there. But it just says, "Hi, the system is undergoing maintenance this weekend. Please contact email support, for any updates. We expect to be up shortly." Kind of like the Apple offline message that we used to get in .NET Nuke, but it's much more user friendly. So, and that doesn't have to cost you much at all. More tools. So that's the back end, right? So we've got our primary and our secondary, maybe our tertiary backend servers. We're replicating with some software. We've got CloudFlare on the front end protecting us and doing the DNS failover in case I can't reach through my my DNS address. I can't reach the primary system. CloudFlare will fail me over to my secondary system. What am I doing on the back end data center? So I've got those servers. What do I do there? So this is basic good IT practices. So you should have a run book. The term run book was new to me over the past year or so when we started doing this. Turns out that the IT guys in data centers call them run books. I call them SOPs, Standard Operating Procedures, work instructions. But this is from Wikipedia. It's basically your routine procedures, the SOPs, and they use it as a reference. It tells them what to do if there's a disaster. And I actually have a little note here that says an effective run book allows other operators with prerequisite expertise to effectively manage and troubleshoot a system. That's another definition. So you need a run book. It basically tells the DevOps guys what to do. I'm coming from a regulated industry, the pharmaceutical industry, where people's lives are on the line. You have to document everything. With the Moderna vaccine, some people are had issues. Which is in the news. You can bet that Moderna is going back through all of their documentation, reviewing everything. There's probably a lot of people working on that and reviewing that to see what other indications or causes there could have been. As IT, we need to say, hey, we tested our system. I need to prove that I tested my system. I need to prove that I tested my backups. Yeah. Do we all do backups? We all do backups. Do we have proof that we did the backups besides the backup log? Do we know that the backup log, that the backup is working the way we planned it to be or that the customer wants it to be. So for the 20, 30 years I've been in the industry, we've created test scripts. I'll show you samples of those. Very simple documentation that says, I have tested the system and it does what it purports to do and will continue to do so in the future. That's what validation is. So in this case, I just want to prove that I tested my plan. And how often are you going to test? Just the first time? No, you're going to test periodically. Semi-annual for disaster backups, once a month, once a quarter. Disaster recovery, at least once a year, maybe twice a year. Something like Zerto makes it really easy to test, which is why I'm growing more in love with it every day. And it's a best practice to have test scripts. It helps you pass audits if you're in the regulated industry. Every time I bring on a new hospital client, they audit me. I've passed every single audit to date over the past 10, 15 years I've been doing this in my hospital market. The customers love it, and you know what? It's a sales tool, right? They say, we're going to pass the audit. Look at what we've got. My sales team presents it during the sales cycle. So we're trusted by some major hospitals. Again, you can have a plan that describes that. If you're not in a regulated industry, you don't actually have a full documentation test plan that says what you're going to do. You can probably skip to the test scripts in the run book, but it's not a bad idea to have as well. Don't stop believing. Right? Continue to do your regular normal file level backups, your database backups, fulls and differentials, your other backups, Exchange, Active Directory, or your other financial back-end system backups, not just database, right? I mean, financial accounting system, legal systems, especially legal systems, it's, all those Word documents, that is the legal system, right? All those briefs that you better have those backups as well. The replication really, covers that, but you don't want to have to go through a replication firing up to get a document for an attorney that deleted a document. Don't forget your cloud apps and your storage, your Office 365, DocuSign, Box, Dropbox, SFTP folders. Continue, doing your normal business. Augment it with the disaster recovery capabilities. For this scenario, tools you won't need is we don't need SQL Server high availability. We don't need transaction logs, no file copying, no PowerShell, no batch files, unless you want to automate the failover. Then you might need PowerShell to push the button to failover. We'll talk about a scenario where if you don't have the replication software, you still could do things like file copying. And I want to put that out there for the public. And we'll do that in our roll your own scenario later. Just to show, the products that are out there for the back end, CloudFlare, check, but the back end, Zerto is rated #1 by TrustRadius. This is fairly recent, I think. Veeam backup. I'm not sure. By the way, I use Veeam for the backup at my site. It does my file backup, my file server backup of my file system. I don't know about the replication, so I'm using Zerto and Veeam for backup. Right? There's some others. I probably won't spend any time looking into replication for Veeam, but I'm sure it's probably pretty good. The other thing you need is, you need that hosting company, and you probably want a decent hosting company because you want them to provide you the software, the replication software. You want them to provide you the Zerto software. You want them to provide you a license to you and give it to you at a discounted price. That replication software, whether it's Carbonite or Zerto or Veeam. I don't pay full price for Zerto. I don't pay full price for Veeam. Why? Because they've got 250, 300 clients in the data center, and they have a volume license, and so I get the benefit of that. So again, my costs are actually cheaper than going to a smaller shop or probably into the Azure cloud. I use Light Edge Technologies. They're a major hosting company in the Midwest. I kind of like that because you're in the Midwest. Less prone to be East Coast or West Coast attractive to problem makers. They have multiple sites, not just Kansas City, Austin, and Altoona. They're located. I'm going to spend. I don't want to spend too much time on this, but one of their major sites is in Subtropolis. I don't know if you guys know about Subtropolis, but Subtropolis is the blah blah blah, right? The artificial caves is claimed to be the world's largest underground storage facility. It's carved out of limestone. I think this Lamar Hunt is not only the Kansas City's chief, but maybe he's Hunt Ketchup. I don't know. I mean, I like him anyway, even though he's not Heinz Ketchup. But and so I'm going to just quickly take. I want to do this super fast. So I have a YouTube video here. I think I'm going to go.
I have seen this before. I know what you're talking about now that you showed me that one picture. Like, oh my gosh, I've seen this. This is crazy.
Yeah, so here's this guy. He's driving his car. I'm going to speed it up because he drives really slowly. Oh, shit. Sorry. Damn it. Screw that up. Let me do that again. Right there. I clicked off. I can't click off. Come on, come on, come on, come on. Don't screw me up. There we go. Still going to go speed 2.0.
Believe it or not, you can just drive right on in.
These are the limestone caverns that they discovered, and they carved this thing out. It's amazing. I've been there. I was there a few years ago pre-COVID. So he's driving very fast. I've got a 2X. FedEx is there. Major corporations. What's fun is you look on the side, you can see the Hallmark cards is there. But there's data. I think for the Midwest, one of the major. This is actually, I think, one of the major telephony junctions for the Midwest is housed here, and we're only seeing, the driving. Right, we're only seeing him driving.
The limestone mine started by the Midwest Mining Company many years ago. They came up with the.
Okay, whatever.
Yeah, this is crazy. I love this.
Yeah, so I mean, the cars parked. Not going to do too much of this. You guys can go and look at it. I don't know what he's looking at there, but what I want to show the. Let's see if I can find the. I wrote down my time. Let me go to 11:45. Right around here. Here's something. So there's all the you can't even imagine what's going on inside. It's massive. The number of companies that are there. Yeah, there's Hallmark. And one more, 1320. I think he gets into a Mexican standoff with a tractor trailer. What time is that? 1320. Actually, I think this is. Well, that tractor trailer goes by, and it was just, this is nothing of what's in there. So you guys can go and find it on YouTube. Just looking for Subtropolis, another car going by. Not just this. He ends up going outside. This is from 2016. You can't do this anymore. You can't just drive in and drive through. This is the olden days. Right? So let me go on. Let me move on here. So this is the Light Edge part of the Light Edge data center, a small fraction of it. There's our, the limestone. This is black and white, so it's there's their, like typical rack mounted, but I mean, the concept of the limestone capability. It's dry. It's very easy. The costs are very low because of the amount of business that's there sharing the costs. I think that's my rack. My server's running on a VM on that SFMon on the top there, maybe. But there's Light Edge, and it's beautiful. You go outside, it's like a gorgeous corporate office. So you need a good hosting company. You need that software. If you're working for a mid-size or regular corporation, and you're in IT and you're managing the data center, and you could do this yourself, and you can have your primary and secondary site. I've worked for pharmaceutical companies that maintain before Azure and before the cloud. They maintained disparate data centers, and they had software running that would do the replication across their pipes. But you're going to pay $2,000, $3,000, $5,000 for that software. I will tell you, I pay $100 for Zerto a month. It's not inexpensive. It's $1,200 a year, but you know what? It pays for itself. Let's go back to CloudFlare, right? So another tool that we talked about is CloudFlare. I won't belabor this, but I do want to point out the words. Ryan and I, we're sort of championing this, but the unparalleled redundancy, the advanced security with the DDoS migration and DNS security. They've got a 51 terabyte network. It blocks an average of 72 billion threats a day. If you have 5 sites, it's free for up to 5 sites. One of the things I love about them, it's silly, is that their DNS server is 1.1.1.1. Makes it easy to remember. I don't know how they got that, why IBM doesn't have that, or Microsoft or Google, but they got it. There's also a great app in the App Store from CloudFlare that it's called 1.1.1.1, and it's basically VPN for your phone. I run it on my phone all the time, and I feel much better about things on my phone now that I'm running this app on my phone. So if you get nothing else out of this, go and run that. Here's my old amateur recovery, disaster recovery. So clients come in over the cloud, comes to my primary site through my Fortinet firewall. So at my ISP at Light Edge, I have a firewall there too. I don't rely only. As a matter of fact, I had this before I had CloudFlare's web application firewall, their WAF. And there's something actually really super beneficial to this. I'll tell you a really nice extra by doing CloudFlare. If you're hosted with and you have a firewall, but basically the traffic goes here, but I've got my Zerto replication going to my secondary. And this is such a bad old amateurish picture. Let me go to Zerto's picture. So basically, here's the primary data center. Here's the secondary data center. And Zerto can replicate from the primary to the secondary for failover. And when we fail back, it can go back. But here's the kicker, right? And this is my next phase. Who says that I can't also replicate from my primary into the cloud at Azure? So I'm not ready to really cut over to Azure yet, but on a full-time basis, because I don't know what the performance is going to be like. I don't know anything about it. But who says that I can't go and buy some space? Probably a pass versus a SaaS, but that's to be determined. Put my server, a VM copy of a clone copy in Azure, and replicate there as well. Guess what, Ryan? This is that tertiary we were talking about, right? So, and it's hot, right? So if CloudFlare and Zerto see that the primary is down and the secondary is down, guess what? I can shift over to Azure or AWS. Oh, by the way, why can't this be Azure and this be AWS? I think it's a little overkill, right? But don't forget, Azure's got 5 of these. Put 5 clouds here, 5 data centers. Little data center B, C, D, and E. So I can be replicating even more with Azure. again, that's why perhaps 3, 4, 5 years from now, it might be fully in the Azure cloud. But every time I say that, I know I have benefits staying with my ISP. But I could certainly have Azure as a backup tertiary site. So let's take a look at the runbook, because this is really where the rubber meets the road. So here's the table of contents. So typical thing, you'll have your introduction, your scope. The runbook is for the IT data center guys. They need to know who to contact. I'm the customer. They need to know what my phone numbers are. I need to give them multiple people to contact. I need to know who they are. I need to know when I get a phone call at 2 o'clock in the morning and my phone's ringing, I need to be able to recognize that phone number and say, okay, it's Tommy from the data center. So that'll, that's all that nice information, standard information. Then we'll have our scenarios. So there's really 4 scenarios. The first one's testing. It's really build and test, right? So I'm going to build this thing out and I'm going to test it, right? And I will tell you that took me about 3 months with them to get that up and running. My second scenario is going to be a live failover during business hours. I'm awake. It's 2 o'clock in the afternoon. What do? We have the application went down. The third scenario is it's 2 o'clock in the morning. What do? We're going to do things pretty similarly, but a little different. And then the fourth scenario is, hey, I went down, I failed over, I got to fail back. I'm not going to spend too much time on this because the simple answer is you wait till the weekend, you schedule maintenance time with your clients, you post a message on the login page that says, hi, system maintenance will be occurring on Friday night from 8 p.m. or 10 p.m. to Saturday in the morning. And you click a button, it starts replicating back, and chances are it'll be done in a couple of hours, not 6 or 8 hours, and you can be up and running pretty quickly. But my runbook, what we'll do is we'll wait till the weekend. Because what if I went down again 5 minutes after I replicated? What if we didn't fix the problem? What if there's a faulty power main in the building and it shuts off again? So I'm going to wait till everything settles. I want to make sure the primary site is really fixed. And then, what if a disk went bad and they got to pull the disk down? They got to put in a new disk. It's got to rebuild, right? Get RAID. So fail back is that simple. Wait till the weekend, push the button, and fail back. What we have in there though is, okay, let's determine what's the status of the application and how badly down is it. Depending on how badly down it is, we might just reboot the server. We might restart IIS, right? I might unload some code I wrote. We might restart IIS, might reboot the server, or really the application just can't come up, so I'll execute the failover, and then again, we'll execute the failback. And then you need to document it because you want to show as part of your process that you had this under good control. So these are the 4 scenarios again. I would say, by the way, in your testing and your build and your test for this, plan for 3 dry runs. Each dry run really took it, you could do it, 3 weeks, week 1, week 2, week 3. We actually took a lot of time in between our dry runs. We did it over 3 months. So in January, we did it. We upped our documentation. We edited our documentation. We thought about it. We made it even better. And then the second one was the test and said, yeah, this really looked like it worked. But are we sure we got everything? The third one is the charm. And the third one is the one that we then said, yep, we're live. It worked twice in a row flawlessly, the second and third time. If the second time looked like it worked, but the third time didn't, we'll do a fourth time, a fourth week or a fourth, That's just the nature of the beast, right? The bottom line is the final test is the last dry run that works without issue. If it gets 5 times, the last one, whatever it is, it's the last place we want concept. So let's go here quickly. So here's a picture of the runbook. I'm going to see if I can click this, and let me bring down the PDF of the runbook. This is a subset of it. Can you guys see the full PDF here? Did I show that? Okay, great. So basically, the live failover during business. And I want to show this so you can see the level of detail for IT, for the DevOps guys. Well, actually, for the data center operations guys and the DevOps guys. What will happen is that CloudFlare, before CloudFlare fails over, we have it tuned so it doesn't fail over right away. We have another tool that I didn't put in my tool set, which is Website Pulse, which I'm going to add to the list. What Website Pulse was doing is it's pinging my site, however many times a minute, every 20 minutes, whatever, and that will send an email alert to the hosting company. If Cloudflare notices it, it'll send it to me, but I used Website Pulse to alert the hosting company at a monitored email so that they get the alert and they kick into action. So between 6 a.m. and 9 p.m., if they receive a notification, they call me because maybe I'm having lunch with my wife or I'm in a meeting. And I don't notice it, right? I'm not being that rude to my client. I'm not looking at my phone, but they call the 911. They call they get through to me, and we have them try me twice. So they call me once, and if they can't get through to me after the second time, they then call. If there's no response from me, they call my backup, who's my partner or my other DevOps guy. So I'm calling the business DevOps. I'm calling the business IT guys the DevOps, and the data center guys are the help desk data center monitors. And so this is the RACI, right? So who's responsible, who's accountable, who's consulted, who's informed, standard RACI. So they reach out to us. They're responsible for reaching out to us and getting us. If there's no response from us, I don't want them wasting their time trying to figure out what the application problem is. It's .NET new. It's my code. Call me, tell me that they're getting a ping error, the website's down. I'll look first, right? How much time is this going to take? Well, 5 minutes, 10 minutes, 15 minutes, 20 minutes. If they can't get through to us in 20 minutes and neither one of us, the two guys, respond, then we tell them, okay, go and check the application. So what we do is we have two websites on the server, on the two IIS sites. And one's got my login to my regular page, and the other's my marketing webpage. Well, guess what? And I'll show you this in a moment. But if my login page on to my DNN data management site is down, but my marketing website is up on the same IIS server, then this is not a failover scenario, right? I've got another website on the same server that's up. Don't fail over. It doesn't make sense. So that's a partial application failure. They'll email me and both DevOps guys, and they'll email the executive because it's not. They really shouldn't go ahead and reboot the server because there could be 5 other websites on there. So they check 1 or 2 or 3 sites. It doesn't look like it's a complete failure. Let's not reboot yet. But if it looks like 2 of the sites are down, we call that a critical application failure. We reboot. They have authority to reboot. It takes a minute to reboot a VMware server. It's so fast. It's wonderful. Great, and it came up and they recheck the application again. If it's up, all's well, we document it and so on and so forth. If it's a major incident impacting the business, they go to step 6. It's a critical failure. We actually had, and this is the only time in 12 years that we had an issue, but there was an outage at my vendor, and it lasted about 4 to 5 hours. And this was last year, so we were down. But going forward, we're not going to be down because if it's a critical application, and there's rules for them to determine if it's a critical application failure, meaning the whole data center is down, fail over. I don't care. Doesn't matter. Nothing's going to happen anyway. Nobody's getting in there. And it's basically, they're saying, well, but when we had that disaster, we pretty much got it up within 4 hours. So we said, okay, well, if it's going to take longer than 4 hours, fail over. If it's going to take less than 4 hours, get us. I'll call my customers my major contacts with my customers, and I'll tell them there's something's happening in the Midwest. There's a failure across the Midwest. We're going to be down for 4 hours. So when the failover is complete, make sure it's up and running on the secondary site. If it's up, email us, let us know, and that's the end of it. So that's the run book that gives those guys their instructions. I'm going to go through this really fast. So if it's 9 p.m. to 6 a.m. Central Time, right, and I'm sleeping, right, they're going to get that notification. They're going to try to determine right away, is it a partial or critical application failure? They're going to look first, then they'll start to reach out to me, rather than reaching out to me, because I don't want them to wake me up yet, right? Is it a partial? Determine that first, then give me the information. If the two of us are not, if the two DevOps guys are both sleeping, because we're both here in Massachusetts, reboot the server. If once the reboot is done, if it's still not up and running, we're going to loop down here and get into executing the failover. But there's a slightly different amount of time here because it's at night. I mean, I might have some Europeans on, or some guys in the Pacific coast might be on at 11 o'clock at night, at 2 o'clock in the morning, but it's not quite as critical. It's not during Eastern, Central, through Pacific, normal business hours. So in this case, we're actually trying to do this every 30 minutes, 4 times. So up to 2 hours executes the failover. So that's the run book. We have the testing in here that tells them there's 2 independent websites. I didn't include the picture of the DNN websites, but they're in their version of the run book. They have the pictures, so they know what they should see when they hit the websites. They see the marketing website, it says Vector, Vector Wellness, whatever. Sees my login website for my client, whatever the portal logo and stuff is. They look at that. They say, yeah, one's up, one's not. And then here's the rubric, right? Is website 1 up and website 2's up? The application's up. If one's down, the other's not, it's a partial. If the other was, and then the reverse, it's a partial. If they're both down, it's a critical failure. And then I didn't put all this in here, and these aren't real IP addresses, but you have to have, as part of your run book, you have to have an environment diagram in there. You have to have the server information, because it could be a guy who's new to the position, right? 2 o'clock in the morning. So this has to be, they need to be trained in it, but they have to be able to use this without, needing me to do it.
Well, David,
so
David, I don't want to push you through any faster, because I've been taking copious notes over here for so many different things. But we normally run until about 8:30, and I feel like we're scratching the surface. Let's jump into some of the Cloudflare, especially that load balancing and monitoring and notification.
We're about to do the Cloudflare portion right now.
Good deal.
So this is just a sample of the test cases. I just want to show you, what you would do to document that you did your testing. And here we are at the Cloudflare configuration. So I actually have 5 websites. I'm tempted to pay them some money because I want more websites, and I'm not going to cheat and create another login. But these are pseudonyms for my websites. So basically, as Ryan showed you, you would have websites. When you get past that page, at the top of the page, you'll be able to pick the website you want to work on. So as Ryan showed you, Ryan, I'm not sure if you showed this much, but when you're setting up the DNS, you basically, as Ryan said, you take over the DNS, move your DNS from GoDaddy or Network Solutions. You have to move it over to Cloudflare, and it's very easy to do that. Put your DNS information in. Add your record, you get your information in. It's website1.com, that's my IP address, and then save it. Now I've got it in there. The next thing you want to do, and again, this is for the DNS failover / load balancing, there's a feature up here called traffic. You would then go to manage in your traffic application. And they call it load balancing. They kind of a bait and switch from traffic to load balancing. You can have up to 20 load balancers. The load balancer is a logical container for your websites. But so, and there's 3 things you do. You create a load balancer, you manage your pools, and you manage your monitors. Your load balancer is the collection of pools. Your pools are your servers in this scenario. It's not necessarily, doesn't have to be that. You can have a pool of 1 or 2 or 3 servers. What I did is I created 1 pool for my primary and 1 pool for my secondary. And our goal here is to show you how you could have your nice little 1 server replicated and maintained in your CloudFlare configuration to go to the secondary. So I call this my primary pool. It's anywhere USA somewhere. It's my primary origin server. It's my first server. I don't have 2 or 3 of them in there because I'm not doing load balancing where I'm moving traffic back and forth because you know, of heavy traffic. So everything just gets the weight of 1. And then you set up your health check regions. I'm going to check in the Eastern North America. I'm not upgrading my subscription for 8 regions. I only need 1 region because if it's down from Eastern North America, it's down everywhere in the world for the most part, unless I have multiple servers elsewhere in the world, which I don't. So again, single server replication, disaster recovery. It's going to notify me, and it's going to notify my other DevOps guy. So this is CloudFlare notifying us. So as soon as there's a problem, I get an email. And you guys saw the email earlier, right? I got the notification, and my buddy, my DevOps buddy got it as well. So here's the secondary server. This is the secondary pool, secondary server. Only 1 machine's in there. And, you know, I just simply call it secondary origin. So I know that it's an original machine, but it's a nice secondary machine. It's enabled. And this is pretty simple. And then I'm done. I'm up and running, and I've got CloudFlare DNS failover. Why am I ecstatic with this? Because my primary pool is up. My secondary pool is down because it's not, I'm not failed over to it yet. I'm not routing traffic there. So you can't reach it. But once my Zerto failover works and pushes it over there and fires it up, which only takes about a minute or 2 to fire up that VM, even if I automate it, it still takes a minute or 2 for it to fire up and spin up. Once that's up, CloudFlare is checking it all the time. This will become healthy. And the only reason to spin it up is that this one is not healthy. So if this is purple or red and critical within a minute or 2 or less, I can speed this stuff up, and I can have automatic failover on the back end, automatic failover on the front end with, within 5 seconds of alerting, and be up in probably a minute or so. The last thing you do is you add a monitor, and the monitor monitors the HTTPS. I have a file on there called healthcheck.htm. It's checking to see if they can see that file. Right, because it doesn't have to look at my whole website. It only has to see if it can, under IIS, if it can see this one little HTML file. And here's where you can configure the interval. How often do I want to check? How long should the timeout be? If I can't hit that health.html file, that's a simple file. Within 10 seconds with 5 retries, I'm toast, right? I'm considering that I want CloudFlare to fail me over. That's my health check, but this is very configurable.
But in that health check, it's not alerting you or emailing you, so you still need your pinging action to take care of that for you. This is CloudFlare's health check to then notify itself about your swap over?
Yes, it will tell me. CloudFlare is emailing me. I'm using my other pinger for the data center guys, because when I went booted last night, right, I didn't want, I have that set to a little less tolerance, a little more tolerance. I don't want them to get an alert every, if I reboot it and it only takes me 2 minutes, I don't want them to get the email because they're going to go into red alert mode. So I use my other ping service to tell them that it's been down for 5 minutes, but I want it to tell me right away. Boom. So I get, my buddy and I get the CloudFlare alerts. The data center guys are lagging behind us a little bit. But I guarantee you, I'm not waking up at 2 o'clock in the morning getting my CloudFlare alert because I'm a heavy sleeper. My wife might wake up and hit me. The last thing in here is, okay, what happens? I'm just telling it to route in the failover order. Go from primary to secondary. If the secondary is down, go to tertiary. Versus dynamic steering, which is for real load balancing. You know, this server is taxed. It's not down, but it's just taxed. And that's pretty much it. Just to give you a quick view of Zerto. In Zerto, you basically just do a couple things. You come in here, and let me just show you this. Yeah, I'm not going to do that one. I'm just going to go over here. Save us time. So basically, you select your group. You pick a checkpoint, right? I selected my group, which is my primary to my secondary. What checkpoint do I want? These are just pictures from Zerto, so it's kind of old. Wow. But I can have, over 5 days, I can have 100 checkpoints. I can go back to any checkpoint I want. And I can also extend that time, you know, and have fewer checkpoints over more periods of time. And then the very first, you know, from a testing standpoint, you click failover test, and you have to do a failover test the first time to start the replication from the primary to the secondary. But once it's done, it's just gonna go out there. It's gonna register the VM in the recovery site. It's gonna make a thin VM. It's gonna connect to that, and it's gonna then boot that VM so I can make sure it's up and running, and I can see everything from the primary. And then it leaves the protected VMs powered in production, and it continues replicating the changes. It's fantastic, right? And then I think I get a nice, you know, there's no break in the replication. So you could do tests as many times as you want. You're not going to do tests more than once or twice a year. Maybe in the first, you know, half a year, maybe you'll do it, you know, twice, you know, and then start switching to have semi-annual. You finish the failover test. It didn't actually migrate from the primary to the secondary, but it populated the secondary, and you can see it running. And remember, I've got a different IP address for that one. And by the way, it's configured in CloudFlare, so I can hit that site through CloudFlare and see that it's up and running, or go onto the console and see it. Let me get back through here. You get a nice report that it's been replicated. I'm not going to do this. Let's skip over that. That's the same thing. But you know, in the end, you know, if I had in the fallback pool, the tertiary, one thing that's annoying, Ryan, is that they tell you that your system is degraded, and it is because one of your pools is critical because it's offline.
Yeah,
I don't like that. Every time I see that, I get scared, and then I have to open up. Oh yeah. My primary's up, but my secondary is running, but it's not accessible.
Right.
That's okay.
I get it.
It just gives me a heart attack every time I see it. Ron, let me just show you this last slide. What else can I do with it? You know, again, this is all VM, so I have a whole bunch of, and maybe I can do this another time. You know, VMware cloning, that whole process. But you can create multiple VM clones and use the replication so that you can test operating system application upgrades before applying them, right? So all those patches that you really should be testing before you put them into production from Microsoft, the Wednesday patches, you could do those in your secondary site. You could say, hey, replicate, let me patch. Why don't I use the one for 2 weeks ago? Because there's been 20 other changes that make that. Right? So let me replicate.
And then when you're done, it's going to get wiped over anyways with the newer copy from prod. So you're great.
Exactly. You can use it for recovering files and folders. Not that great, but you can. Guess what? I'm a developer. You know what I'm using this damn thing for? It's making VM copies. So I'm not going to say this on this recorded thing, but so that I could stop developing in production. Because it's very hard to maintain, right? You've got production, you haven't done any coding in a month. You know, let me get the latest version replicated over to my development environment. You know, in the Atlassian world, they call them rings. Let me get that over there so I can have my latest version of my of my production system to start coding again. My friend Joe says this is fantastic, the best thing ever, because Dave isn't coding in production anymore. You can run reports. You can have a replicated system and run reports that may impact the system. The Active Directory, I don't do that, so because I use DNN. But the last, besides the developers, wouldn't it be nice to have a training environment with up-to-date copies of the data? And then when you train on latest data, it's not occurring in production. Using this capability is really powerful. Just the cost, Zerto, like I said, cost me $100 a month. I did want to show you that the CloudFlare pricing, $5 subscription gives you, and you need this for the load balancing, but the $5 subscription gets you a little load balancing. And then
some of the features that I was talking about earlier, the web application firewall part, that's at their base level $20 a month account. And
right.
So if you have that plus the load balancing part of that, that's $25 a month. So you can have different combinations of CloudFlare that you're using, but for
right.
this portion, you're at least at $5 a month.
Right. Now, someday I hope to have 3 million DNS queries, and I would be happy to pay them $2.50 for that. But I'm not there yet, so it's free, right? This is how many DNS queries hits you get. And if you're like me, you could pass that cost on to your client.
Absolutely.
It could be built into your pricing, or you can pass it on. So I think that's pretty much it. I'll just put this up on the screen so we can see it in the video. Here's how you can roll your own. It's kind of old school. Put your data, your metadata and your data on non-OS drives, clone your C drives, just clone the whole machine, host it at a secondary site like we've been talking about. Still use CloudFlare for the DNS failover, but then start using old school robocopy to ship your metadata changes over to that secondary site. So you don't have to pay for Zerto. Stage your VM clone, leave the C drive, don't worry about it, and every now and then, and copy and restore your database backups, post them, whatever you need to do there. But every now and then, and by the way, it's just how you can convert your physical machine to a virtual and then use it with VM Player. But the last part of that would be just refresh your clone periodically. You could do a partial clone. You could do the OS drive only, because if you're posting your metadata and your data over there on your D, your E, your FG drives, then maybe you just refresh the C drive once a month.
You just want the site drive.
Because maybe there's nothing on there. Don't put IIS on your C drive, right? Don't put anything on there except for Windows, right? Install all your apps onto a app drive, right? And so this is a poor man's way of getting that. Or you can keep your C drive up to date by doing 2 installs: install in production, install, .NET Framework on install in production, I'm going to install it over in my secondary site. So that's about it. The patch in parallel. I guess we don't have time to talk amongst ourselves, but
we certainly do. We certainly do. We kind of ran quickly through a couple of things that I was going to ask you about in CloudFlare, just because I don't use their notifications or their health monitoring alerts very much. I use external ping services for that type of thing. Do you use it much for anything else outside of the load balancing part?
Nothing. That's the only purpose I've had, in the 3-4 months I've done this. That's the only benefit I've seen. And I don't know how I would use it for anything else. I mean, the health is, I don't know what else CloudFlare would do outside of it. It's got all those, it's got a lot of icons at the top. I haven't investigated the rest of them. I can't imagine what else there is in CloudFlare that I would want to be alerted to, but that may just be that I don't know.
Yeah, they have a whole section of notifications that, because of something else you brought on screen, I brought it up and thought, I've never dug into here, but they have this whole passive monitoring section that I should dig into to read about a little bit.
I've got a question regarding the,
Yeah.
I noticed that it does some caching of your site to help obviously speed up performance, but also if your original or origin site is down, then the caching will take over as well temporarily. Does that caching cause any issues if you're updating your origin site?
Dave,
Yeah.
would you mind if I stopped your sharing screen and I picked up sharing?
Oh
over
yeah,
here?
I thought I did that. Go ahead, please.
All right, let me mention something, Steve, because that's something that am I sharing the correct screen? Are you seeing CloudFlare at the moment?
Yeah.
All right. That back in that early presentation that I had done long time back, where is it? Here it is. I talked about some of the features and benefits of CloudFlare, and one of them was that I don't know where we actually talked about it. One of the concepts, one of the selling points for me before I understood other things that CloudFlare could do is that they promote that they will, even if your server is down, they will show or display a cached copy of your website. And what you can do is you can go through and put some rules and say, cache everything, but don't cache functional things like the contact us page or something where there's a form to submit. And then you could browse that cached copy while your server is effectively dead. And that was a big selling point to me. What I have learned, I'm not exactly disillusioned with CloudFlare about it because I've moved on and there are other things that I appreciate. But what I have learned is that even on the paid versions of CloudFlare, it takes a certain traffic level of requests from that site constantly for Cloudflare's services to bother caching those pages. So if your site and if that client has a lot of traffic, then yes, if your server's down for a moment, you would get this, what I have on screen right now, which is a cached copy of the homepage of this website. And it says this site is currently offline. However, the always online service is displaying it. Click here to try again for a live version. But you could click around in the menu and you could get to the majority of pages, and they're cached as of perhaps even a day ago. So it's pretty fresh content. However, out of perhaps 40 or 50 sites I have in CloudFlare, I've got like 4 that this thing actually works on. And I've demonstrated and tried desperately to test and found that unless they hit that level of traffic regularly, CloudFlare doesn't keep a cache for them. And so it doesn't do it for the majority of my client sites. So that's a feature that I love the idea of. I would love it if some other services did that idea, but you can't really rely on that in CloudFlare unless you have that traffic level maintained.
Because they would have to, I think that they probably realize the amount of things they'd have to cache.
Mm-hmm. And crawl.
They probably thought back then they didn't have the same number of clients, right? They didn't have the same user base.
You know what? It might have worked better in the past and works less well now. That's entirely possible. But I remember doing some support requests where I asked, could I pay for a higher level to get that service? Because that would be worth it to me. But they described that that's just not the way it works in today's environment. But that's what the screen looks like if you ever do have it. I didn't bring it up on screen, but there's some other things that I talk about in that demonstration. For instance, there are some other challenge screens that you're able to control and work on. So if you want to have a branded version of the Cloudflare challenge, if they're blocking traffic from getting to you or they're giving some type of service message, then you are able to control what that looks like and brand it. So here I'll bring one up as an example. This was an old client of David and myself, Poindexter, called Jackrabbit. And this was a very basic version. All the logos and graphics or things aren't loading because this is local. but we basically were showing the marketing message, but then underneath the CloudFlare message. And so we were branding that 500 error page or the challenge page, or, or what have you. If you were being blocked by a security type of action, then, we might have some marketing spin on it. Security where it matters. Hey, you've tripped a detection. What should I do now? Why should I do, what should I do next? And how can I make this go away? And then Google, Cloudflare's point of things will show down below where we're showing a Google reCAPTCHA. So there's other stuff we can kind of dig into in a later Cloudflare session if we want to dig into even more. Dave, as you've gone through these things, I've brought up sites, and I've really kind of held on to a bunch of different links that you've mentioned in your presentation. I don't know if that presentation is something that you can share a copy with us, or if you want to give us just some of the text and links out of, but I will post those to the both to the SouthernFried website and to the community site as we start to wrap this meeting up. We'll be posting those along with the video recap. And so I'll take a glance here with the chat real quick to see if there are any other questions in the chat, although I think I was kind of monitoring those as we went along through. But does anybody else here online with us have any other questions for Dave or myself?
Yeah, so I actually had one for you, Ryan, but it's kind of more of one last idea that when you're sitting there and you've got your website out in the world, it doesn't mean that the bad actors don't know what your IP address is, right? Mm-hmm. They could have found that out at some point. And on one of my older servers, one of my older applications, when I would log on to that server, remote desktop, all of a sudden I would see malware bytes in the bottom right would be popping up and saying, malware bytes, I'm rejecting this traffic that's trying to come in off of port 80. And I sat there, and for 2 weeks, I was, I obviously, it was getting through my firewall because, my Fortinet, high-end firewall I'm paying a lot of money for, but it was getting through. But that's because it knew what my address was, and it's just sending traffic through port 80, and it was getting rejected. And my friend Mike came up with the idea of actually putting a rule into the firewall that said on port 80 and port 443, only accept traffic from Cloudflare.
I like the idea and the implication of that. It also means that if Cloudflare is not working, you are toast.
Yes.
I like it though.
I haven't had any experience. Well, Cloudflare is my DNS host, right? So if my DNS host isn't working, whether it's GoDaddy or Network Solutions or Cloudflare, I'm gonna have that problem. You're right. There's no doubt about it. You're right. But that really, all of a sudden, all those attacks went to zero.
Yeah. Well, folks, I've had a great time connecting with everyone again. That's one of the best parts of being here in the DNN community is we reach out and we get different voices coming in, and they have all got ideas. And then I finish the night not being able to go to sleep. I start thinking about new ideas and new things to try out, and that's one of the main things I love here about the DNN community and SouthernFried. Thank you very much, David Weinstein, for joining tonight with us and telling us a good bit about disaster recovery here and migration from Cloudflare. Thank you very, very much. That's a shout out too for everyone else who's watching either after the fact or who joins us here. If you've got something you're passionate about, something DNN focused that you have done that you'd love to show off, we'd love to talk about it. So reach out to myself or David or post a message to us on the website, and we'd love to have you come in and talk with us next time. Speaking of next time, we have our next SouthernFried meeting. They are always on the third Thursday of every month. So that would make our next meeting on May the 20th. Again, I'll mention that we're going to try to do it earlier in the day. To help with those announcements, we'll post it out on the Slack website. We'll put it on our public website. We'll also put it out if you are connected with the meetup location. We'll update the meetup location, and when we do so, it should send everyone who's connected or following the meetup. When we change the time, it should alert you there and send an email. But my expectation is we're going to try it in the daytime, Eastern time. That might be as early as 1 o'clock in the afternoon Eastern. But we will let everyone know as soon as we can. Without further ado, I'll say good night, everyone. Thank you for joining us. Thank you for watching us on the recap, and we'll see you at the next SouthernFried DNN user group. Thank you.